Hey, hey, hey! Welcome to the show. This is Business Pants Tuesday, January 7th, 2020. I'm Damian Ross. That's Matt Mascardi. We are Free Float Media. Hey, Matt.
What's up? I
You
just want
sound.
to be as peppy as you are. That was a good.
I was actually trying to scare my cat, but it did not phase her at all.
It was good though. I liked you had so much energy.
Hey, yeah, I'm feeling it. I got a half a cup of cold coffee. I have a third of a cup of disgusting tea, and we're good. We're good.
Wow, delicious.
Yeah, delicious. Get to the show.
Let's do it.
Let me look at my agenda today. Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about the Big Tech Tuesday. We got some stoic stories about deep fakes and stuff like that. We got some lots of good meatless meat to discuss. Our favorite,
I love
our
meatless meat.
favorite category really is meatless meat. And then finally, Matt's gonna looks like he's gonna make some friends today, some chums.
I am. We're gonna get chummy today. We're gonna get chummy. Well, I realized I have to do some explaining too. I got some explaining to do, so
Good.
we'll do some of that.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it. Just want you to know
That sounds different.
well the music team still has
Yeah.
not done your non-harp
Okay.
version yet. So you're going to have to live with the harp. Just live with it. Just suck it
I
up.
don't mind harp. I just wanted, a variation.
All right.
It can still be harp.
Right.
It can still be harp based. Doesn't have to be harpless harp. It can be harp stock. All right, let's get going. In honor of our snarky Golden Globes brethren, I'm looking right at you, Ricky Gervais and Sacha Baron Cohen, two fine gentlemen that we've talked about on this show before, believe it or not. I'd like to begin by paying homage to their political commentary the other night at Hollywood's Dippy Celebrity Trophy Show.
Fine.
But really, what is the term for this? This is not political commentary. This is what we're trying to do here. This is corporation commentary. Is there a term for this? Do we need to develop one? What are they
Fact-based
doing?
business snark, right?
Right, and that's exactly what they're doing. So I applaud them. First, Ricky Gervais, who's really the king of corporate office comedy, I would say. Here's his quote. Apple roared into the TV game with The Morning Show, a superb drama about the importance of dignity and doing the right thing, made by a company that runs sweatshops in China.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a zing. Then he skewered soulless TV writers by mentioning the streaming wars. Apple, Amazon, Disney. If ISIS started a streaming service, you'd call your agent, wouldn't you? So that's nice. I like that.
Nice touch.
And then, of course, Sacha Baron Cohen, he definitely wins this one. He steals the show here. Sacha's already planted his flag deep in the Facebook sucks camp, so this is no surprise. But he was introducing a movie called Jojo Rabbit, a satire about Nazi Germany, because, of course, we need more satires about Nazi Germany.
Darn enough.
But here's what he had to say. The hero of this next movie, is a naive, misguided child who spreads Nazi propaganda and only has imaginary friends. His name is Mark Zuckerberg. That's pretty strong, Sacha. I gotta give it to you. That's strong.
That is strong. As an investor, though,
Yeah.
I mean, false? It's not really false.
I mean, it's clearly
Dude's
over,
the soul.
it's over the top, but there's a little bit of truth in every phrase there, unfortunately, for Facebook investors. And it's like the comedic version of all the things that we're complaining about here.
But he's got kind of a reason to say this, right? Because Facebook just comes out with a new policy like every day that's confusing.
All right, so let's go right into it. So this is one of the reasons why I brought it up. It's a perfect segue, Sacha and Matt. So Facebook has yet again come up with another. I don't even know. I don't even want to call it half baked because that sounds like fun. It's like batter. It's like a batter policy. Wishy-washy nonsense. That's what we'll call it. So they have a deep and they announced this at the Consumer Electronics Show of all places. This is their policy on deep fakes, hey, we should ring our own bell here because this was one of our trends, right?
It
Like a
was.
week
It
ago.
was your decade trend. It's
Yes,
we're like
deep
9 minutes
fakes,
into the decade. You're already right.
January 7th, and we're already at it. I love it. I should retire right now, which I think I already have because I don't see my paychecks anymore. But
Yeah, I don't. Someone's got to call HR.
all right. The social network said yesterday that it planned to ban deep fakes that use AI to manipulate video. But of course, we're dealing with Facebook, so there are plenty of exceptions. Facebook is banning videos that have been manipulated using advanced tools, but the policy does not extend to content that is parody or satire or video that has been edited solely to omit or change the order of words. So, I mean, what the hell? First of all, how are they going to train people to identify parody and satire? And second of all, is you can manipulate the actual words they're speaking, and that's fine. Like clearly, there's no plan here, right, Matt?
So this is another lovely unleavened policy from Facebook that just sounds like a way to I like look at the conundrum they're in. They have now acquiesced that they're going to allow political ads to tell lies.
Yeah.
Deepfake is the ultimate video lie where you're effectively making somebody say words or do things that they didn't say or do. But they cannot, like, the policy has to basically allow for ostensibly I can make a political deepfake ad,
Yeah.
right? Like if you're Bernie Sanders, you can make a deepfake of Trump doing something,
Anything.
anything,
Really, I mean, really, honestly, I mean, pretty
and
much.
and the policy would allow for it. It doesn't even.
So
I
I randomly went back to our OK Billionaire section just to look for quotes. I don't know if this is the best example, but I didn't have a lot of time, so I just picked something from our favorite whiny billionaire, Leon Cooperman, who said, "This is the quote: I believe in a progressive income tax and the rich paying more, but this is the fucking American dream she is shitting on." Okay, so he's referring to Elizabeth Warren, of course. So I just reordered the words to say that this is the Leon Cooperman quote now. I believe in shitting on the fucking American dream. So that's fine, right? I can attribute that to Leon Cooperman. I can put that on my news feed, and that's totally fine. It's fine. That's not considered a deep fake in any level, right?
I should we do that?
Excuse my
Yeah, I
language.
think this is something we need to do. Look, bottom line here is, like because Sacha Baron Cohen and Ricky Gervais can lambast, the Facebooks of the world,
Hmm.
but it's pointless. Mark Zuckerberg, it's a fake public company. There is nothing you can do except wait for them to get regulated, which isn't happening, right? Because
Well,
Facebook is
I don't
very
know.
clearly writing unleavened policies to allow any
Yeah,
regulator to sort of feel comfortable
get
enough,
confused. Yeah,
but not actually manage the problem, or consumers stop using it, right? Like that's
yeah.
it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if populism swings left here in the next election, something could happen. And also,
I don't know.
and this is the believe it or not, there are actual points to this show, but one of them could be like that we try
Where?
to
Show me those.
identify risk in the market, right? Investors could start to take these risks seriously, and Facebook stock doesn't have to keep going up like day after day. I mean, right?
Yeah, but it's the advertisers that effectively have to take the risk seriously. Like the
I guess
brand
that's
risk of being on Facebook has to become
right.
real enough that advertisers say, you know what, the reach, we can get the reach somewhere else, or there are other methods of reach. But Facebook has 2 billion users. They're effectively the third largest country in the world just based on
Well,
their own users. And they have an autocratic king with no real oversight,
no,
except and all every other government's treating them like they're part of the UN, like it's negotiations with. I don't know. I just think this is a problem that bubbles and brews until it hits a point where Facebook's just not cool anymore. The 2 billion users are all like
That might be
70
that's the
years
ultimate.
old
Yeah,
and
yeah.
everyone's on something else. And Facebook is going
That's it.
to what they're going to do is they're going to stop Facebook from acquiring the next cool thing
Right.
because they have that's where they have to step in. Like, okay, you can't acquire
Well,
anymore.
you just pointed out something very important, I think, and the ultimate end of Facebook is going to be sort of the wave of like this wave of negative sentiment that's washing over young people who are just not going to use Facebook, and then it's just going to dry up and go away. Right? I mean, there can't be anyone under 30 at this point who cares about Facebook.
But they all care about Instagram.
True, that's true. That's true. All right. It's worth noting that Monica Bickert, Facebook's vice president of global policy management, that does not sound soulless, will be testifying before Congress tomorrow.
They're just gonna find everyone at Facebook and just have them testify. They're gonna be like, contractor Joanna Zhu is who worked at Facebook for 4 months on a summer internship will be in front of a congressional committee to talk about numerical entry.
Yeah, they picked her because she doesn't sweat. All right, let's move on. Let's stay at the Consumer Electronics Show, which is opening in Vegas today or yesterday. I don't really know. Let's talk about another
You're
kind
so
of
well
deep.
informed for a news show.
Look, I mean, does it really matter? It's going on. That I know. Another kind of deep fake, and this one might be even, I don't know. But anyway, we're still in the deep fake territory here. This one's from Samsung. This one is called Neon, which they're calling, and forget about AI. AI is stupid, right? AI is lame. It's a lame name. Neon is an artificial human. So
It's a fake. It's not a deep fake.
and it's not just a dumb voice assistant like Alexa. It's not a dumb robot like Maddie. Sorry, Maddie. But rather, it's a video chat bot that can learn people's preferences and respond to their queries in an unusually lifelike way. Samsung hopes that companies and people will license Neons to be so that they can be used as such things as yoga instructors, TV anchors, spokespeople, movie actors, and financial advisors. I feel like 3 out of 6 of those are us.
Can I ask you something though? How flexible is an artificial human?
Do you have that picture up, by the way?
I do.
Let's.
If you're watching the live stream right now,
Yeah.
they released an image from CES of the artificial humans.
Yeah, and let's. If you're listening to the show, Google it right now. Samsung Neon. Do a Google image search, or
just
do
get
a
on
DuckDuckGo.
Periscope
Do a
and watch us,
DuckDuckGo
or
search.
Twitch.
I dare you. Yeah, go to our website. These people, Matt, I'm looking at them right now. They're better versions of humanity than me.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're better dressed
right?
than you
They
are.
they look more put together, more human-like, more reliable, more trustworthy than. Yeah, I mean, they're incredible. I mean, that's a true deep fake. I mean, right?
I mean, the one thing that AI was not set to displace is the service industries because, like, like it's really hard to be served by a robot. But the fact is, if they do it really well, I guess, I guess, what I guess we can all get served by robots. Sub question: do these count in Facebook's deep fake policy if it's a total fake human?
Well, that's a good question because I would say initially they do because I think that for some reason Facebook is interested in AI created deep fakes, right? That's their first target for some reason.
So I guess this is, I mean, like if
right?
Mark the artificial human comes out and says, Senator Ted Cruz shot me in the foot and never paid my health bills. Is that legal? Illegal?
That's fine because it sounds like that could be parody. I don't know how are they? I don't know, right? I mean, I would love to know Facebook's line between parody.
I don't know. As an investor, all of this freaks the hell out of me. Like,
well, Yeah.
It suggests a future that, like, if you're buying into this future, there seem to be these unintended consequences that we have yet to grapple with, and we are smart enough at this point to know, smart enough to have seen the impact of social media on sort of groupthink, and like the negative impact it can have on social systems,
Hmm.
to know that an artificial human, or do we just up the ante? Like, I just feel
Artificial
like,
human.
and how can an artificial human have a social media page of their own?
Of course. No, I mean, they do already.
In
I
which
mean, right?
case,
That's
yeah,
half of
bots,
Facebook.
right? In
Yeah.
which case, does Facebook get to have like 9 billion users, only 7 billion people
Yes.
on the planet?
Of course.
It's an unbelievable. It's so confusing to me. I'm gonna join Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos on Mars.
Yeah.
That's what I've just decided.
So you think they're gonna have you? Um, not
Yes.
to not to be too selfish here, self-involved, but this one really hits hard for me because as we speak, my partner Courtney is training to be a yoga instructor,
Oh.
which
Oh.
is the first one listed there, right?
Mm,
The next one, TV anchor. It's basically what we're doing now. I know it's
mm.
YouTube, but that's essentially what we're doing. Spokespeople. I mean, we're hoping to do some ads here on Free Flow Media. Movie actors. I mean, again, my partner, she's a theater actor, but soon they can do theater and
Sure.
financial advisors. I mean, that's it.
I did that. Yeah.
That's our entire world here. I mean, really, why don't we just
Congratulations,
yeah,
Samsung.
why don't we just like lock the doors, spray paint the windows black, and just get like right, just get it
Samsung
over with.
just bankrupted Free Float Media and or the Rawless Cook
Oh,
family.
all right, let's get out of there. Let's
Yeah, let's go to something
heart me out here.
a lot happier.
Heart me out. All right, are you ready for this, Matt?
I
You want to know something?
love this.
You want to know something else that was introduced at the Consumer Electronics Show? This one you really can't guess.
Oh, well, I can because I'm looking at the cue card.
All right, well then I'll pretend you're not. Impossible Foods announced at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas,
Yes,
and we'll have
stop
to
right there.
discuss why, that it will introduce meatless ground pork and sausages this year at Burger King.
Let's just rewind a second and say
Yeah.
Impossible Foods is somehow consumer electronics.
Well, do you want to pause here? Let's talk about that for a second. What's going on?
All
I
right,
don't
so
understand.
here's a question. Here's
Yeah.
the way I think about it. Why I think that's moderately absurd, because a company's going to take any chance it can to talk about itself and how great it is. So any
Okay.
conference at the size or scale of like CES would draw a company. That said,
Hmm.
this is a question of kind of like beta, which if you're not like an investor person, beta is just like how a market moves. It's basically like what industry or what market a company belongs in and how that market moves. If you put Impossible Foods, which isn't a publicly traded company, but Beyond Meat is, if you
Hmm.
effectively call them tech or consumer electronics companies, do we compare Impossible Foods to Google, or do we compare it to Tyson chicken nuggets? Like, where do they fit? Because where they fit actually makes a big difference on whether or not you think these companies are worth anything,
Right.
right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that to me is the absurdity of like them being at the CES. Like, we're all
Yeah.
just kind of like, yeah, I mean, there's technology involved in making fake meat. So,
Didn't Snapchat like unveil itself as a camera company, and Uber is really just glorified taxi service that's somehow a tech company, right? I
these
mean,
blends are utterly confusing, and
yeah,
they are meaningful, because what
they
like
are. They are.
quote unquote real analysts in quote unquote Wall Street quote unquote do is look at the differences between a company and its peers, and whether or
Right, like
not a company is
sector-based
like set
analysis.
to outperform. Right, that's
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
primary function of the analyst, and you're setting peers is kind of like a big deal.
Yeah. And look, it's also a good target in other ways because it seems like Meatless Meat is the perfect Silicon Valley audience target, right? Because
But they
if
have
you
other
don't smell,
problems, right? Like,
yeah,
go ahead.
I was gonna say if you don't smell it too deeply, it feels like a product that could help not save the world, but it if it cuts in to the livestock industry in a meaningful way, it could have global repercussions. So it's like it seems like the Silicon Valley types who purport to want to change the world daily is a good target audience, right? Like they're good promoters of this.
Well, speaking of the livestock industry,
Yeah.
they
Oh,
are
you want me to
not
move on?
promoters of this, and neither are vegetarians.
All right, let's talk about meatless meat. Let's stay in meatless meat. So first of all, here's a disclaimer on Burger King's website in the United Kingdom. Okay, ready? The Rebel Whopper is plant-based. However, it is cooked on the same broiler as our original Whopper to deliver the same unique flame-grilled taste. Due to shared cooking equipment, it may not be suitable for vegetarians. So, once again, vegetarians, you are losers in our society.
This gets back to, look, I'm a convert to actually eating. Like, I've decided I am the target demographic. I'm somebody who eats meat, but
You do.
occasionally wants to not eat meat, but wants a burger, right? So I must be the target demographic here. But like everyone is confused about who's supposed to buy this, because how on earth do you, like, how do you advertise this? Do you say,
Yeah.
like, love meat? Try some not meat sometimes when you're not in the mood for meat, but still want meat. Like, what does that advertising campaign look
I
like?
Yeah, I think they're missing something because I read this great article in New Yorker about this, and I was converted to believing in this industry somehow as a way to like change the world or really eat into the climate crisis. That's how they should be advertising. Every package should say, "Eat this crap, and you will make Greta Thunberg happy." Like that, I feel like that's no, really. I really think that that's the direction they should be focusing, because it's as we pointed out here, it's not healthier. It's certainly not cheaper, right? So let's just get to the point. Maybe let's just get to the political point.
It also requires no artificial insemination by someone like Dr. James Stengel,
Yeah.
who penned a rather incendiary
Yes.
op-ed in Livestock News, about
Which we have,
how
which we have a subscription to here at Fleet Foot Media. We
we
do subscribe
we read
live.
this regularly, about how, what was it? It will give you.
Plant. Here, I'll say it very simply, Matt. You cannot mistake this in any way. Plant-based burgers will make men grow boobs. That's it. I'm not no editorial commentary there. That's what he thinks.
So
That's what he's
this is
saying.
the pushback. I mean, does it get more pushbackier from the livestock
No.
industry? Who
Well, they also said that like a month ago that meatless meat essentially is dog food. So that's I'm not like paraphrasing. That's what they said. Dog food. Dog food and boobs. The meat industry is officially 12 years old, everybody.
So Burger King, if you're listening, you're not. But if you were,
Yeah.
here's your new ad campaign. Want man boobs? Not a vegetarian? Eat a Rebel burger and save the world.
Well, maybe add to that curious about dog food. I will say that I give props to KFC, who just launched a plant-based chicken sandwich, and also in the United Kingdom, calling it simply the Zero Chicken Sandwich. That's straight to the point.
That is
I like
0%
Zero
chicken.
chicken. But really, you're describing everything that's not chicken in the entire world. Just so you know, KFC,
I'm going to have a
that
hot dog. Can I have a 0 chicken hot dog,
that's my
please?
laptop. That is my chest hair. That is this door. So it's pretty much everything. All right. I think
Oh,
that's all I got for you, Matt. I think that's it.
all right. I'm going to make something if I can
All right.
focus.
100% to you.
All right.
What are you making?
What am I making? So I'm gonna make today. I'm gonna make some chums. I'm gonna make some buddies. But
Sounds
first,
weird, but I'm going to stay with you. Okay.
well, so I was talking to my wife about the last couple of shows, and she thinks we're obsessed with boards, and we kind of are. Well,
Yeah,
I
you are.
kind of am anyway.
Damn right. I
Um,
like
and she was like, I don't get it. Like, I don't totally understand why you're obsessed with boards. So I want to start with a very brief explainer, which you can kind of help me on. Starting with the question, like, wait, why do we give a shit about boards again? Like, why do we talk so much about boards here?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to start with number one, and you can fill in any blanks that I'm missing. Number one,
right.
You are a shareholder of companies, okay?
Or stakeholder. Let's
Or a
let's
stakeholder. But even as like if you have a retirement plan, you're a shareholder. So that's a lot of people
Okay.
who have
Fine.
a retirement plan. Even if you don't know what's in it, even if you're just owning like the S&P 500 ETF, like just the market, and you don't care, you still own shares of companies. Okay. So that's number one. And if you buy stuff from a company, when you like this Christmas or holiday season, when you are buying shit on Amazon, you are effectively a stakeholder in that company as a consumer.
Definitely.
You support that company.
Definitely. Yeah.
So that's number one. Like the board is involved in your life in ways that you don't necessarily know as a shareholder, as a stakeholder.
Let's say, you know what, to help, I think, talk about what a board is or why it's important. Let's use Facebook as an example, because I think because of the unique situation there, I think it's worth using the Facebook board as a.
Facebook's
right?
interesting because the board doesn't matter in a way, but.
Okay, but it could and should, and it's regulated too.
Right.
So let's pretend it does.
Okay, let's pretend it does.
This is why we're obsessed with boards and why we think it should matter. So
which gets us
gets
us to number two.
Mm-hmm.
As a shareholder, you are the board's boss. Okay? For most companies,
because they're independent, right? Most of them are independent. They don't have you're right. I mean, they don't really have. They're not answering to anyone else at the company.
They do not answer to the company. For most companies, Facebook is an example of where you are not the board's boss. Mark Zuckerberg is the board's boss. But for most companies,
right,
you are the board's boss. And that means that you get to sort of say a little bit what you care about, like what the board does. You are their boss. So if you're wondering like, well, okay, I'm a shareholder. I still don't care about boards. I'm the board's boss, but so what? What the board does, if you don't like what Facebook is doing, for instance, if it was a normal company, you can vote the board out. Okay?
Right.
Facebook, you can't do that because Zuckerberg owns them.
Right, but you can there have been examples of controlled companies where one person like Zuck controls the vote, but the non-controlling shareholders make such a stink that it actually does lead to changes. So
it can.
If you continuously voted against the board at Facebook, even tone-deaf Zuck might be like, okay, I'm going to make some changes.
Highly unlikely.
Okay, but still, it's.
But the last point I kind of want to make on why we care about boards is the board. So you're a shareholder. You're the board's boss. The board is management's boss. Okay.
Right. That's the most important thing. So the board is set up to be a counterbalance to management, which you have no control over hiring and no control over the day-to-day operations, but the board does. And again, it's meant to be the counterbalance to the management.
Capitalism is surprisingly democratic in this way because you elect board members as a shareholder. You are their boss. They are answerable to you as a shareholder. Their job is to run management. If you don't like what management's doing, you vote out the board. That's how you actually affect change at companies.
Yeah.
That's
pretty big because at some companies and in some countries, if that board member does not get a majority support, they are gone.
They're gone.
Immediately.
Done.
Yeah.
Now in this country, we get zombie board members if they decide to stick around. But these are all exceptions to the rule. The baseline here is you are a shareholder, you're the board's boss, and the board is management's boss. So, if you don't like that the FedEx package came really late during the holiday season, you think their operation stinks, and you go into your retirement account, you realize you're holding FedEx, you actually can do something about that, which is to say, this board is not helping this company run well. I will vote members out until I'm happy with them. You can do that.
Believe it or not, you can do that.
Believe it or not, you can do that. So yesterday, I had a whole spiel about McDonald's board and a bankrupt company, trucking company's board. and in which I kind of asked the question, is there really a difference? Because I talk a lot about like white stale men who sort of run these boards, who are on these boards. Is there really a difference between a frat party board and a corporate board? Is there a distinguishable difference? In fact, I went through the process of McDonald's board because McDonald's is talking about culture change. And I said, look at all these interplays between McDonald's board and all these other boards and how they're interrelated. And really, the point of that is to get to one question, which is, these people are labeled independent stewards of your money as a shareholder. Right? So I talked about Miles White yesterday. His name doesn't matter. He could be anybody. He happens to be an old stale white guy. I mean, I don't know if he's stale. I haven't met him. But I can tell you that he's an independent director at McDonald's, and he's interconnected with all of these other board members and companies in all these different ways, such that you have to wonder whether or not, like, what his incentive is. If all your buddies are on the board or in management or on another company who's also on this board, if they're all over the place, what is your incentive? So
hold on. Let me interrupt for 1 second.
Please.
So it's important to point out that the term independent here is completely subjective.
Yes.
Right? There's no objective sense of the term. I mean, so as we pointed out here, in England, if you've been on the board for 10 years, you are legally not independent, and you can't. There's no way you can make the case otherwise. You're just simply not independent anymore. And in the U.S., they have certain criteria for what makes a director independent or not. At the Corporate Library, which is a company, a predecessor to MSCI, which I started at, we sort of pioneered this approach where we weren't comfortable with with the way companies were liberally using the word independent. So we developed another term because we didn't feel like they really were independent. And these things caught on after a while in the industry. So just because you call someone independent doesn't mean it's real, right? I mean, it's not based on objective criteria. So it's worth pointing out here that more often than not, the company will say someone's independent, but that doesn't mean they're independent. So anyway, I don't want to get lost here.
Well, my takeaway here was that Damien pioneered stuff. That was my takeaway.
I like that.
No, but the fact is, to your point, and I went through the data today and yesterday, I was looking at it, and you will find companies whose CEO retired like 2 or 3 years ago. The CEO, the now ex-CEO, who was the CEO for 10 years, is on the board, and they are suddenly labeled independent because they are no longer the CEO of the company. They are no longer management. Now, you tell me whether someone who works in a company for like 40 years, is the CEO for 10 of those years, is on the board, and they're independent of the company.
Right? It's crazy. It's crazy. And that was one of the first things that we changed. We no longer would call those people independent because it's nuts. It's ridiculous.
So here's the question that I wanted to start to answer. And I'm not going to answer it today. I'm going to give a quick case study, but I want to like put it out there, and we're going to touch it this week probably.
All right.
What makes someone a chum or independent?
Okay.
Right? Like there's no, to your point, there's no criteria here, but can we tell at some level when there's too much chumminess or when someone might actually be independent? Is there a right way to think about, you're the boss of the board, is there a right way to think about how a board should be constructed? Should you look at people and say, we harp on diversity all the time here because diversity of viewpoints actually accrues to independence. There's like academic research about how having diverse sets of opinions is better for, risk-adjusted problem solving. Like this is not our theory. This is like academic theory in practice. And a lot of that has not translated to how boards are constructed because you as a shareholder mostly hand your power to the manager of your money to elect the boards, and the managers of our money, our money, our collective money, are very close to management. They don't.
Yeah, they're typically both pro-management.
They don't really care that much. When you look at the numbers, They don't care. So I wanted to give you a quick example of like
Okay.
what I've started to look at, but we'll come back to. So the company MetLife, the insurance company,
Yeah.
they have 13 board seats. One
Okay.
of those board seats is occupied by management. That's the CEO, okay?
Sure.
That leaves 12 board seats that are hypothetically, quote unquote, independent. Okay?
Mhm.
So you have 12 people that to fill. Now you can vote out the CEO because this is not like a dual class company. It's not a controlled company. This is a company that if you as a shareholder wanted to vote the CEO out of the board, you could. You could do that. But that rarely ever happens. So we're just going to
And
say
they
that
won't listen anyway. Yeah.
they have 12 open seats, okay?
Okay.
Now you are their boss. You hire and fire those 12 open seats. You hypothetically fire the 13, but we'll just say the 12. Now, out of the 12 independent, quote unquote, board members, those board members are also on average, 2.3 other boards. So effectively, every one of those 12 people is also doing 2 other jobs. So let me ask you something as a shareholder and the board's boss. If you had 3 jobs, if Damian Rollis had
Yeah.
3 jobs right now,
Yeah.
which
Oh,
we
man.
eventually are going to have to get because there's not nearly enough people who are
Thank God.
listening to our show.
Yeah.
So
Thank God minimum wage is
please
going up.
share
Yeah.
our show for the
Mhm.
love of everything. If you are their boss, are you okay with them working 3 jobs?
Hell no.
Should they be working 1 job?
Well, I think you're leaving something out too, because I would say that the far majority of U.S. board members have primary jobs to begin with,
I'm
and
not
then
even
they
counting
have,
those. I am
and
just
then they have
looking at
additional board
boards.
jobs, right? So this is like they have 2 other board jobs and this board job and another job. No, I mean it's ridiculous.
It's
No.
ridiculous. So I actually I'm starting to look at it, if anyone's over the age of retirement, those are probably more purely board positions that they have. But if you're under 66 years old in the United States, and I'm only looking at US companies here, if you're under 66 years old and you've got like 4 board seats, you definitely have a day job. You almost definitely have one.
Definitely.
So what I did, and to explain why this matters, right? Because you could be like outraged, like, how dare you have 3 jobs? But what I did to explain, at least touch on why this matters, and we'll come back to all of this over time. I actually looked at something called Controversies. Basically, it's like bad corporate behavior, okay? This is when companies, you read about them doing something really terrible in the news. That news gets captured by all sorts of data providers. You can actually just count how many stories get captured, and I can adjust it so that because big companies are in the news all the time and little companies aren't. So you just kind of adjust it and say, all right, well, relative to their size, how many controversies do companies have? It turns out, and this is why you might care about how many jobs your board members have, how interconnected they are, how entrenched they are, and how difficult it is to understand these interrelationships, and how maybe you should be voting if you're voting. And I don't care if you vote, but this is the cost of the voting. It turns out the more chummy, the more board seats that these people have, the more interconnected they end up being, the more controversies their companies tend to have. Okay, so this is just
like asleep at the wheel a bit more, like hanging out with the buddies a bit.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if this in the end is going to hold true across every place, but this is your taste. This is your look at why you should care about boards at all, what your role is, and chumminess. So this is to be continued.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
So I want to shout out our listeners for subscribing and rating us, because we really love it and need it. I also want to shout out our executive team here. We don't have a board. So if you're looking to get a board seat, there are board seats available at Free Float Media. We will auction them off.
Call us.
Thanks to our executive producer, Courtney Rowe, our advisor, Courtney Cook, our other advisor, Dan Rogatschnig, Todd Hovanek and the Brass Tacks gave us some music today. John Walsh is doing amazing art for us. And wait, we have more art coming. We are Free Float Media. I am Matt Muscardi. That is Damian Morales. It was January 7th, 2020. We will be back tomorrow to bring you more business news.
We'll be back in form of Artificial Humans by Samsung Neon.
We'll see you artificially tomorrow. Bye, Damian.